I'll get to your complimentary play on the Big Ten championship game between Illinois and Ohio State in just a moment. But first, I want to talk boxing, especially in lieu of the passing of marvelous Marvin Hagler last night. Back in what I like to call my previous life, when I was a sports reporter and eventually managing editor of the now defunct Sports Network Wire service, one of the things I enjoyed the most was also covering boxing, because boxing was always my favorite sport. I grew up watching boxing with my father every Saturday and Sunday, when you used to be able to turn on commercial TV on ABC and CBS and watch a great bout every Saturday and Sunday. It was my favorite. So consequently, when I got to call my own shots, there was not a major bout from 1983 through 1989 that I did not cover. And I saw them all, and I saw some great fights. But without a doubt, two of the best fights I ever covered involved marvelous Marvin Hagler. The first one, of course, was April 7th, 1987. It was the Hagler-Leonard fight. And listen, I loved Sugar Ray Leonard. Absolutely loved Leonard. First fight my father ever took me to was the first Leonard Duran fight, okay? So Leonard was there. Next to Muhammad Ali, Leonard was my second favorite fighter. But going into that fight, I was covering that fight. And back in those days, boys and girls, before we had the internet, before we had cell phones, before we had Twitter, the way you covered those fights, and for then, when I was in charge of the Sports Network Wire service, the bulk of our clients were broadcast clients. Radio, TV stations, TV and radio networks, etc. What you used to do is you used to go to the fights, and literally, I'd be on the phone doing play-by-play. There would be two guys at the other end alternating rounds. As I'm doing play-by-play, they are literally typing. So if I'm saying Hagler lands a hard right, he circles around, he throws an overhead right, etc., they are literally typing, and they are sending out, word for word at the end of the round, my recaps. And that's how it went, round by round. Now, I type 148 words a minute. Those guys are typing almost as fast, taking turns round by round. I'm doing play-by-play. They're sending it out. And that's how people are getting it at the TV and radio stations. That's how life was before the internet, back in the 80s. So I'm doing the round by round for this particular fight, as I did for many other fights. And going into this fight, I thought it was going to come out one of two ways, because, of course, Leonard's coming out of retirement for this fight, and with Angelo Dundee in his corner, who I had met before. Angelo Dundee, a guy you'd say, "Hi, how you doing?" And that would result in a 10-minute conversation, because he liked to talk, but a great guy. I thought it would come out one of two ways. It would either be he would be a shot fighter like Ali was against Larry Holmes, or he would simply fight like Ali did in his prime. But in the latter stages of his prime, not when he was Cassius Clay, but when he was Muhammad Ali, and he didn't quite have the physical tools he did when he was a younger boxer. He would simply circle, he would use his legs, he would use flurries at the end of the round, he would stay outside of Hagler's reach and his power, and he would steal rounds in the judge's eyes and accumulate points. Well, if you saw the fight, or if you've seen it since then, that's exactly what Leonard's game plan was. 30-second flurries at the end of each round, accumulating points, and the game plan was brilliant. What I did not expect was Hagler coming out and abandoning his southpaw style and his stance and fighting conventional style as a right-hander in the first two rounds. I mean, I wasn't the only one flummoxed by that decision by Hagler, which cost him the first two rounds of the fight. So, as the fight went on, I'm judging the fight, and it comes time, of course, you got to immediately at the end of the fight, call in your decision. So I had Leonard winning. No ifs, ands, or buts. I knew exactly what it was. I had to call on my decision. I have Leonard winning it by 3-point advantage, and within seconds of me calling it in and the guys at the other end sending out the decision, I get a call back saying, "Are you sure? Are you sure?" ESPN's on the phone. They want to know, "Are you sure?" And it's like, of course I'm sure. I just watched the damn fight. Well, the reason, of course, is There is like a 7-minute gap between the end of the fight, the commotion in the ring, before ultimately the split decision is announced. And what has happened is, and you can go back, you can look at this on Wikipedia, it was all over the board. Howard Cosell, who, was a lot of things back at that time, but an astute judge of boxing, had it 117-112 Leonard. Associated Press had it 117-112 Hagler. UPI had it 116-112 Leonard. Here I am having it 3-point advantage Leonard. ESPN's Al Bernstein had it 115-113 Hagler. Another guy for ESPN had it a draw. HBO's Howard Letterman had it a 2-point advantage for Leonard, but Larry Merchant had it as a draw. And ultimately, you saw it was a split decision for Hagler. Boxing. It depends on how you look at boxing. I'm a guy who always looked at boxing as somebody, when you evaluate a fight, it's not necessarily the amount of power punches, it's the amount of punches land in the style of the fighters. And when you go back and you look at the boxing stats in that particular fight, Leonard threw 629 punches. Nowadays, you see fights where some of these guys, especially in the heavyweight divisions, you're lucky if they throw 130. And he landed 49% of them. A lot of them were love taps that wouldn't hurt you or me. But in the judge's eyes, they accumulated points. Hagler threw 792 punches, but he only landed 37, and those first 2 rounds cost him. So there you go. It was the most important fight call of my life. But I got it right, at least on that night. Now, the other thing is, I will say this. If the Hagler of 5 years earlier fought Leonard, even if Leonard was in his prime, if these two guys were both in their prime, I think Hagler would have destroyed him. Because that's how good Hagler was. I wasn't around in the 50s. I never saw Sugar Ray Robinson, who they say was a prime guy when he fought as a middleweight. I will say that of all the middleweights that I saw, Bernard Hopkins held the title for like 4 years. Hagler would have destroyed him too. Sorry. Bernard, you were good. But Hagler would have destroyed you. Best fight I ever saw, however, and the fight that I bet the most money on and won was Hagler-Hearns. And listen, you guys, it's a different generation, the UFC and all that crap. I don't watch boxing anymore. I don't watch all the pseudo hybrid boxing crap that they have out there. I just don't, I have no interest in it. But the best match I ever saw was Hagler-Hearns. I mean, that was the absolute best I ever saw, and you should see it too. April 15th, 1985. I mean, you can watch it on YouTube. Best 8.5-minute fight I've ever seen. I mean, Hearns comes out and absolutely attacks for a guy who historically was a slow starter. Stunned Hagler in that first round. I had so much money on Hagler that night. Myself and another guy who I used to call the voice of doom, because whenever you bet with him, he was just always bad news, and I thought he was going to be the voice of doom that night for me too, but we were both heavy invested on Hagler that night. Stunned Hagler in that first round. Hagler regains his composure. Second round, somewhere along there, Hearns breaks his hand. Third round, Hagler cut opens up. I thought, oh my God, they're going to stop this fight. And it was like the blood. Hagler saw that cut and it was like, I got to finish Hearns now. And you saw Hearns' legs get wobbly and Hagler took him out. But that is the best 9 minutes of boxing, 9 minutes of viciousness you will ever see in your life. Watch it on YouTube. Okay, let's talk about these games today. Let me just get the latest odds here on this game. I'm looking at the Illinois game against Ohio State. I'm laying the points with Illinois. Listen, Ohio State getting to the Big Ten championship game, they only beat Michigan yesterday because Michigan's most important player was out because of a foot injury. That's it. Otherwise, the Wolverines mopped the floor with them. I really believe that. Illinois is the best team in the Big Ten. They're playing the best ball. They just beat Ohio State. What was that final score? They beat them 73-68 just 8 days ago. I do think the price is a little inflated here looking at this number, but I don't mind laying this price either today. I mean, you're looking at 5. No, you're looking at 6 points now. Is it a little high? Yes. But I still like the Illini in this game because they are the most complete, most well-rounded team in the Big Ten, especially with the injury for Michigan, which probably will affect them in the big dance as well. So I would lay the points with Illinois here in this contest. In terms of your other late afternoon games, of course, Houston and Cincinnati, I'll tell you what, guys, I think it's too big of a number, and I would go with Cincinnati plus the 13 points because when I've looked at Houston this season, in games where I've been interested in taking the Cougars where they land the big points, I've consistently been disappointed. Yet, whenever I think of putting money on Houston or when I have won Houston, I always am consistently screwed. So I want to touch that game if you gave me money to bet on the Houston Cougars today. So although I think the Cincinnati Bearcats are the play plus the 13 points, I wouldn't touch that game if you paid me. I think the Virginia Commonwealth St. Bonaventure game is an interesting one. I think they're two evenly matched teams. The fact that they haven't played for a week, the fact that the game is in Dayton, I don't know. I really don't know. I think that St. Bonaventure is the better, well-rounded team, and they have a better team offensively. The VCU team is strong defensively, but so is St. Bonaventure. It's a tough game. So of all the games on today's card, other than, of course, the game between Alabama and LSU, which is my best bet, I still think Illinois is the best one for your complimentary play today. So that'll do it. Wish you well, and talk to you again soon. Let's put it that way.